Hey guys, this is Blaine again, coming to you guys with class number 4 in the UNL Livestock Judging Online Judging Series. We're going to switch it up with this class a little bit, change species, and go to Duroc Gilts. Really good Duroc Gilt class. I think it'd be a good class for you guys to learn some things from, definitely be able to discuss in a reasons capacity, and so make sure you take good notes. We're going to do this video the same as we've done all the others. Scroll through here. There'll be a place for you to pause with all 4 of them on the screen. That way you can get your placing, go back through, critique them, and then have a little bit of a description there at the end. Again, this will be class number 4, Duroc Gilts. So here's gilt number 1. There is gilt number 2. Gilt number 3. Gilt number 4. Then here's your picture of all 4 of them. You have 1 there on the top left, 2 right beside her on the right, 3 in the bottom left, and then 4 there in the bottom right. So get you a placing. Okay, we scroll back up to gilt number 1, and again, we want you to go off of big picture. And before we start looking through these, one thing I would encourage you guys, if you're going to talk this class, and I hope you certainly do, one thing I would say for you guys to do is make sure to incorporate ear notches somewhere in the set. I know you may not be able to read them off the picture, but just try to give me an ear notch in this particular set of reasons. Also, you want to incorporate underlines and vulvas somewhere in these gilt sets. And so there's a really good difference that we'll talk about in a pair of gilts where I think you can really bring that up. But just keep that in mind. When you go into contests and you're talking gilt classes, you want to make sure and incorporate underlines, vulvas, ear notches need to be in there as well. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Okay, so number 1. This is a really long spine gilt. Gilt that's super extended. We can certainly see that. I think if we study her angle to her blade there up front, I think she certainly has a good angle to her blade. She's got some C shape there to her knee. She's one that I think is level up top, pretty square out of her hip. And she looks like she has a decent amount of shape in terms of her muscle pattern. I'd certainly give her that. If I want to get critical on this one, I think from a functionality standpoint, she misses the mark a little bit. I think she's a little too shallow and flat bodied there through her center skeleton. If you study her rear leg, I'd like to see her sit down with some more cushion to her rear pastern, especially her rear right pastern. Just have a little more angle to her rear leg. To me, she could just look a whole lot more maternal in terms of her center body, in terms of her rear leg structure. She needs to be bigger footed and stouter bone. I don't know if we could get behind the gilts. Maybe we could see that this one's a little too flat bodied, maybe a little more closed up there at the surface. But again, a long spined extended gilt that certainly has some C shape to her knee up front. So here's number 2. Number 2 here is one that I think really brings a lot of good things to the table. If we study her for functionality first, I think we can appreciate the maternal center body that she brings to the table. Really good in her angle to her blade up front and her C shape to her knee. She's good in her rear leg structure. I think she's got some set to her rear pastern. Looks like she's plenty functional in the way that she goes to the surface on her rear two. She's good and square up top. She's level out of her hip. And to me, she looks like a powerful, opened up gilt that certainly has some shape and dimension. I think you can certainly appreciate that about her. She's pretty feminine through her front 1/3. Not a whole lot to really just pick on in this particular gilt. I think she's one that's quite nice, no doubt about it. Here we find number 3, another really nice gilt that I think brings some awesome things to the table. Really broody. She just initially hits me as the really powerful, huge-footed, stout bone, big-legged gilt that's really broody in her body type. She's the dark red gilt as well. That's a good ID to have on this one. I think she's one that's got a ton of turn to her lower stifle and her upper hip. Really powerful, big forearm gilt that I think is big-backed and opened up from behind. And if you study her angles, boy, is she good in her shoulder angle, her blade angle there up front. She's good in her rear too. Got a lot of set and curvature to her rear leg. Really just a broody, functional female as a whole. Maybe not just quite as cool in terms of the crest of her neck as the gilt that we just looked at. And there's some trade-off there. One thing I'd want to fix about her is her underline. She looks maybe like she's a little bit blunt there in terms of her underline. You'd like to fix her there in that regard. But again, a really big-bodied, good structured, powerful, big-legged gilt. A lot of good pieces in this particular female. Now we go to number 4. Number 4 is a female that from a balance standpoint, I think balances up quite well. She looks level up top. She's square out of her hip. I think she's good in her lines, and from the outside, she balances up pretty good. She's very proportional, pretty deep-bodied gilt that I think has some center rib capacity. And she certainly has some look from the outside. I won't take anything away from her in that regard. Now, things that I really notice about this one I might want to fix is she looks a little straight structured. I think she looks a little straight in her blade there up front. I think she looks a little straight in terms of her rear leg. And so from a structural standpoint, there are things about this gilt that I'd certainly like to change, especially in her angles up front and in her rear leg. And so, again, structure, especially in these females, is our utmost priority. We've got to be keeping that in mind. Again, in a gilt that is good looking, good balanced, has some body. From a power and mass standpoint, she probably ranks just somewhere there in the middle. Not overly bearing in terms of power, but certainly has enough. But again, structure is a little bit of a question mark on this particular 4 gilt. So, we get a big picture view of all 4 of them here in front of us. We kind of think about how maybe this class settles in. I really think it sorts into a very high quality top pair between 3 and 2. And I think they kind of have a gilt that just sits third. I think you have a gilt that needs to go bottom. I think 4 needs to go third. I think 1 probably needs to go ahead and sort down. Reason being, 1 just doesn't have enough body, doesn't have enough power and stoutness. Her rear leg structure doesn't look good enough. She's just kind of the big picture thing to do. She is the thing to save yourself points. Go ahead and get her bottom. 4, that's a pretty nice gilt. Balances up, has some body. I just think her structure is a question in terms of how straight she is on her rear leg and in her front 1/3. I'd probably keep her in 3rd. And then I think the top pair is really, really interesting. I think you've got a gilt in number 3 that's the biggest bodied, the broodiest in terms of her center skeleton. She's the big-footed, stout bone gilt that's probably got the most toe spread at the surface. I think she's one that's big back, stout pin, probably as powerful as anything. I think if you like number 2, you like her because she's a little stronger behind her blade up high. She may be a little bit more feminine up front, potentially. But I do think it's a close pair. I think the big advantage, and one thing I definitely want to hear, is that I think 2's teat placement and size is more ideal. I think she's better in her underline, and so you'd certainly want to bring that up there up top if you were talking this particular class. I think it's a close pair. I could see it going any way, either way, to be perfectly honest with you. I end up liking 3 over 2. But again, if a person wanted to start 2, I could certainly see where they were going, no doubt. So, for an official on these gilts, I like the class 3-2, 4-1, and I'd cut you 2, 4, and 7. See, you have to get the 1 gilt bottom or you end up taking a pretty big cut there. That's the biggest cut. That's what the big picture things you have to do to save you points. That's her. A really nice class, just based off quality. You have a top pair of females that I think are a little quicker to catch your eye. In the end, I like the broody body type and stoutness of 3. The middle pair needs to go 2 over 4, no doubt about it. 2's much better than the angle to her blade and her rear 2. I just think if we got these things out on the drive, she'd be a lot more flexible in her retraction step. You'd see a little more flex in that particular female, travel with a little more ease. The bottom pair is where the biggest cut lies. You have to use 4 over 1. She's just so much more maternal about her center skeleton. I think she's probably got a little more width and power at the surface as well. So, a really good class, a class that I think would be beneficial for you guys to talk. Hope you enjoy it. I'm going to try to do a couple more, maybe 1 or 2 more pig classes, and then try to transition into some sheep and goats as we move further along. So again, if you have questions, feel free to contact me. Hope you enjoy. Thanks.